Lance Parker had barely wiped the sweat off his forehead when he jogged into Lakefield Elementary, the sting of disinfectant hitting his nostrils. He'd come straight from his shift at the Hightower Distribution Center, where the continuous hum of conveyor belts and the smell of cardboard had become a second home. Dressed in a faded gray t-shirt and jeans splattered with warehouse dust, he felt out of place among brightly colored walls and bulletin boards featuring cartoon animals. His eyes fell on a sleek, gunmetal gray sedan parked at the curb outside a car that screamed luxury and monthly payments he could barely keep up with. Serena's car, he thought, his heart thumping. She hadn't mentioned coming here today. Why would she suddenly appear at Jaden's school? He stepped into the hallway, the overhead fluorescent lights casting long shadows on the glossy linoleum. A large analog clock ticked ominously, echoing against the silence. At the far end of the corridor, he caught a glimpse of a familiar silhouette. It was Serena, her raven-black hair styled in a neat twist, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't see him, she was too absorbed in her conversation. Lance slowed his pace. Something about her voice made his stomach clench. The tone was harsh, clipped, almost mocking. He wanted to turn around and leave, but he couldn't resist hearing what she was saying. His footsteps silent, he ducked behind a tall school announcement board decorated with children's handprints. From there, he listened. "Look, it's not about the trouble Jaden caused," she said in a hushed yet urgent tone. "He's just a kid, these things happen. The real problem is that Lance doesn't know the truth. None of these children belong to him. Not one." For a split second, Lance wondered if he misheard. A jolt of electricity shot down his spine. What the hell is she talking about? He thought. Blood pounded in his ears, drowning out any rational thought. Serena chuckled softly, an unsettling sound in a place meant for children's laughter. "I just need to wrap up this business with the house. Once that's done..." She paused, letting out a bitter sigh. "I'll be gone, and he'll never see it coming." The words hit Lance like a punch to the gut. His heart hammered so loudly he was sure she'd hear it. He wanted to step out, confront her right there, demand answers. But he was frozen, trapped between shock and fury. What does she mean the kids aren't mine? Every cell in his body screamed for an explanation. At the other end of the hallway, Serena turned slightly, giving Lance a better view of her face. Her lips curled into a small, confident smirk, something he'd never associated with the warm, loving wife she'd always pretended to be. That smirk shook him to his core. The phone call ended with a curt goodbye, and she slipped the device into her purse. Lance thought he might see guilt or worry in her eyes. Instead, her expression was smooth, poised as if she'd done nothing more than discuss a dinner reservation. His palms were drenched in sweat. He glanced at the family portrait pinned to his mind's eye. Serena in her white lace wedding dress, Jaden as a toddler, and Ava as a giggly baby in his arms. Was it all a lie? Fearing she might walk in his direction, Lance peeled himself off the wall and darted back toward the entrance. Every step felt heavy, like wading through wet cement. By the time he reached the front doors, his breath was ragged and a sharp ache bloomed in his chest. Outside, a gust of autumn wind rustled the trees, sending dried leaves skittering across the ground. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady his nerves, but his hands still shook. God, is this real? A few parents strolled by, chatting about weekend plans, oblivious to the storm raging inside him. Lance forced a nod their way, lips pressed tight, his mind spinning with questions. What did she mean, the kids aren't mine? He swallowed hard, chest tight. Could this be some sick joke? But the memory of Serena's voice on that call, so genuine, so cold, anchored him to a sobering reality. He turned toward his old pickup truck, ignoring the sting of betrayal. With trembling fingers, he fumbled for his keys. Get Jaden and get out, Lance. Deal with Serena later. It was a decision born of panic, but it was the only one he could manage. A single tear threatened to break free, but he blinked it away. He had no time for breakdowns. Jaden needed a ride home, and this was not a conversation to have in a public hallway. His emotions churned like a violent ocean, but outwardly he tried to appear calm. In the back of his mind, one unrelenting question hammered away at him. If the children are not mine, then whose are they? And how long has she been lying to me? He inhaled a shaky breath, The horizon of his life had just been torn to pieces in a single echoing moment. The drive back from Lakefield Elementary was unnervingly quiet. Jaden sat in the passenger seat fiddling with the zipper on his backpack. Usually, the boy would regale Lance with stories of the day's soccer scrimmages, math tests, or a new friend he made. Today, he seemed distant, picking absent-mindedly at a sticker on the dashboard. "You okay, bud?" Lance asked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Jaden merely shrugged. "Just tired, Dad. Long day, Dad." The word felt like a knife twisting inside Lance's chest. He forced a smile he didn't feel, shifting his gaze back to the road. "You have no idea how bad my day was, kid." When they got home, Serena's car was already parked out front, as though she'd never left. The sun was dipping below the rooftops, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Lance's pulse quickened. He dreaded stepping inside. "Hey," Serena greeted with an oddly sweet tone when they walked in. She was in the kitchen, setting down plates of roasted chicken and vegetables. "How was school, Jaden?" The boy muttered a short response about it being fine and slunk off toward his room, leaving a swirl of awkward silence in his wake. Lance tried to keep his eyes off Serena, but the tension in the air was palpable. She flashed him a smile that looked rehearsed. "Dinner's ready," she said, motioning to the table. "Don't let it get cold." Lance felt a wave of nausea. She's acting like everything's normal. For a second, he questioned if he'd imagined that entire conversation, but the pit in his stomach told him otherwise. He sat down mechanically, cutting into the chicken without really tasting it. Serena chatted about superficial things, a neighbor's new landscaping, some sale at a boutique downtown. None of it registered. Lance gave half-hearted nods. That night, after tucking Jaden and Ava into bed, Ava's giggles as he tickled her goodnight still echoing in the hallway, he found himself lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. Were there signs I missed? Times she avoided me or made excuses? He thought about the day Jaden was born. He remembered Serena's exhausted but triumphant smile. Had that been nothing more than an act? He recalled Ava's first steps, how they'd both cheered when she toddled across the living room. Had Serena faked her excitement? Hours passed, marked by the soft hum of the fan and the occasional distant siren. Lance turned onto his side, eyes burning with unshed tears. His phone lay face down on the bedside table. He had an urge to text his friend Miles, a lawyer and the closest thing he had to a confidant. But it was almost midnight. "I'll call him tomorrow," Lance decided. He heard Serena stir beside him, her breathing steady and calm. For a moment, he felt a surge of anger. How can she sleep so peacefully after saying something that vile? But he closed his eyes, inhaling slowly to keep his composure. Eventually, he drifted into a fitful sleep, haunted by twisted images. Serena on the phone, smirking as she revealed her lies. Jaden and Ava calling him Dad, while their faces blurred into strangers. He jolted awake once, heart pounding, only to realize the nightmare had seeped into his reality. There was no denying it. Something was horribly wrong in the Parker household. Morning light crept through the blinds, painting streaks of gold across Lance's unshaven face. He'd slept maybe 2 hours at most. Every muscle felt tight with tension as he stepped out of bed. In the kitchen, Serena was humming a tune, flipping pancakes for the kids. "Morning," she said, flashing that bright grin. "I made extra chocolate chips in Jaden's. Figured he could use the treat." Lance forced a nod, muttered something about having errands to run, and dashed out before she could question him. He drove straight to a small cafe near downtown, a hole in the wall with chipped paint and mismatched chairs. Inside, Miles Hughes was already seated, cradling a Togo coffee and scanning something on his tablet. Tall, lean, and perpetually well-dressed, Miles looked up with a puzzled expression. "You look like you've been through a war," he said in a low voice. Lance plopped down, pressing the heels of his hands to his temples. "It feels like it," he replied, voice hollow. He recounted yesterday's incident in the school hallway, the chilling words, the tone of betrayal. He didn't hold back the confusion, the fear. Miles listened intently, setting aside his coffee. A crease formed between the lawyer's brows. "Serena said the kids aren't yours?" Miles repeated, as if to confirm he heard right. Lance nodded, jaw clenched. She also mentioned something about finishing business with our house and leaving me in the dust. I have no idea how long this has been going on. Miles exhaled a slow breath, tapping his fingertips on the tabletop. All right. First things first. You need proof, Lance. Something concrete. Rumors and overheard phone calls won't hold up in court if she's aiming to screw you over. Proof? Lance echoed, rubbing his temples. How do I even start? Miles leaned in, voice going quieter. DNA tests on the kids. Discreetly. If they come back negative, that changes everything. Also keep an eye on your finances, shared accounts, mortgage details, any sign of money going missing. The weight of it all made Lance's stomach lurch. DNA tests. God. But what if they come back that way? That they're not mine? Miles placed a reassuring hand on Lance's shoulder, face solemn. Then you'll need to figure out how to handle it emotionally. But from a legal standpoint, you'll have grounds to fight back. A judge won't look kindly on a spouse who's lied about paternity, especially if she's trying to take the house. Lance swallowed hard, eyes darting around the cafe. A few patrons were absorbed in their laptops or breakfast wraps, paying no attention to the storm swirling in the corner booth. I can't believe she'd do this, he said, voice cracking slightly. We've been together for almost a decade. Jaden is 10, Ava's 7. How long has she been lying to me? Miles hesitated, choosing his words carefully. People can hide a lot under the guise of a happy marriage, but let's not speculate too much yet. Focus on getting facts. Then we plan our next step. They exchanged a few more words, plans, timelines. By the time Lance walked out, he felt both numb and determined. He had a mission: find the truth, no matter how ugly. That evening, Lance arrived home with a paper bag of groceries, heart still pounding from his conversation with Miles. He forced a casual smile when he spotted Jaden and Ava sprawled on the living room floor, coloring pages from a new puzzle book. Dad, look! Ava piped up, showing him a scribbled drawing of a princess with bright purple hair. Isn't she pretty? His heart clenched. Very pretty, he whispered, ruffling her curls. Great job, honey. In the kitchen, Serena was at the stove, humming a soft tune while stirring a pot of soup. From an outsider's perspective, she embodied the perfect homemaker's sleek hair, immaculate outfit, an apron with a floral pattern. The scene felt surreal, given the poison Lance knew lurked beneath her warm facade. He set down the groceries and leaned against the counter, observing her. She smiled sweetly. You've been working late these days. How was your day, hon? The question made his pulse spike. Is she testing me? He wondered. Busy, he said shortly. Got a few errands done, though. Serena's phone buzzed on the counter. She shot a glance at it, then at Lance, as if wary he might read something he shouldn't. With practiced ease, she tapped the screen to silence it, the name R. Blackwood briefly flashing before disappearing. Lance felt a flash of anger coil in his gut. He pretended not to notice, focusing on rummaging through the grocery bag, but inside his thoughts were loud. So it's true. She really has someone else. Dinner's almost ready, Serena said, turning off the stove. Kids, wash your hands. A short while later, they all sat around the dining table. Lance forced conversation about school and upcoming soccer tryouts. Jaden was excited he might get to be a forward. Ava made up a goofy story about a talking cat, yet Serena's laughter felt overly bright, and Lance's responses were mechanical. When dinner ended, Lance offered to do the dishes. As he scrubbed plates under the warm faucet, he heard Serena's phone buzz again. She was in the living room, presumably texting. Curiosity ate at him, but he wouldn't confront her blindly. Not yet. Miles is right. I need real proof. After the kids settled into their rooms, Lance approached Serena carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. Everything okay? You seem busier than usual. She looked up from her phone, eyes guarded. Just a friend I'm catching up with. She paused, then added with a hint of defiance. Why? Something bothering you? He shook his head, lips pressed into a thin line. No, just checking. Their eyes locked. A tension simmered in the space between them, a silent standoff. She eventually turned away, phone clutched tightly in her hand, leaving Lance alone in the hallway. Shadows stretched across the floor as the last traces of daylight faded. A swirl of conflicting emotions, love, betrayal, anger, threatened to overwhelm him. This is only the beginning, he told himself grimly. He thought of the conversation with Miles, the plan for DNA tests, the unstoppable wave of revelations soon to crash over their lives. Stepping into his bedroom, Lance paused to look at a framed photo on the dresser. Serena, beaming in her wedding dress, Jaden perched on Lance's hip, and baby Ava in Serena's arms. When was this photo ever real, he wondered, switching off the light. He had no answers, only questions, and a slow simmering determination to uncover the truth. A heavy silence blanketed the Parker household that night. Outside, the wind rustled the branches of a tall oak, its leaves scraping the window in a repetitive, hollow rhythm. Inside, Lance lay on his back, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun circles above him. Next to him, Serena was fast asleep, or at least pretending to be. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was only feigning slumber. Her breathing was too even, too precise. Maybe she's just that good at lying, he thought bitterly. A sudden vibration on the nightstand startled him. Serena's phone lit up, displaying only a partial message before it dimmed again. Lance shifted his gaze to her silhouette. She didn't move. His pulse hammered in his ears. It's now or never. Slowly, he slid out of bed, careful not to disturb the comforter. The floorboards creaked beneath his bare feet. He reached the phone, heart thudding so loudly he was convinced Serena would stir. She remained still. He lifted the device. Locked. There was a passcode, of course. He glanced over his shoulder. Serena hadn't budged. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "You've come this far, man." Then, in a surge of desperation, he pressed the power button again. A preview of the most recent text remained visible. R. Blackwood, don't forget tomorrow. Let's finalize everything. It vanished before Lance could read more. Damn it. He swallowed hard, thumb hovering over the screen. I need more than just a name. Ronan Blackwood. It was new information, but it wasn't enough. If he confronted Serena now, she'd just deny everything. Suddenly, she stirred. Lance froze, phone still in his hand. "Lance?" Serena's voice was groggy, tinged with annoyance. Panicking, he tapped the screen off and slipped the phone back onto her nightstand. In a single fluid motion, he backed up and scooted into bed, trying to steady his breathing. "Yeah, I'm here," he managed, voice cracking slightly. "Just couldn't sleep." She exhaled a sigh, rolling onto her side. For an agonizing moment, he pictured her glaring at him through the darkness. But she didn't speak. After a minute, her breaths evened out again, leaving him alone with the hammering of his own heart. A wave of shame and anger mingled in his gut. He hated himself for sneaking around, but he hated Serena more for forcing him into this position. I can't accuse her blindly. I need real proof. His friend Miles had said as much. With clenched teeth, Lance vowed he wouldn't do anything impulsive. The phone ordeal was just the start. He lay awake, mind churning, until the first pale hints of dawn brightened the edges of the curtains. Only then did he drift into a restless doze. Morning sunlight splashed across the room in bold stripes when Lance opened his eyes again. Serena had already left the bed, presumably to make breakfast or see to the kids. He rubbed the grit of exhaustion from his eyes, pushing aside the quilt. Big day at the warehouse, he murmured to himself, thinking ahead. But no matter how busy his shift was, one thing stayed crystal clear in his mind. I have to gather more evidence quietly. He dressed in the same jeans from the night before, pulling a wrinkled shirt over his head. In the kitchen, the smell of brewing coffee mingled with toast. Jaden and Ava were at the table, munching cereal. They both looked up, giving him bright smiles that twisted his heart into knots. God, how do I keep up the act around them? Serena appeared, hair neatly pinned back, phone in hand. For a split second, their eyes locked. He noticed how her lips tightened, as if daring him to ask about her midnight text. He said nothing, just poured coffee in silence. "You're up late. Everything okay?" she asked with a casual air that felt anything but natural. "Just had trouble sleeping," he replied, forcing an indifferent tone. Her gaze stayed on him for a beat longer before she pressed her phone to her ear. I need to take this, she muttered, stepping onto the back porch. Lance exhaled slowly, meeting Ava's curious stare. She tilted her head. Daddy, can we paint in the yard later? She asked, innocent eyes shining. Sure, sweetheart. He managed a small smile. Let's do that after school. But even as he spoke, his mind flickered back to the night before. The text from Ronan Blackwood. The notion that Serena had an entire secret life unfolding right under his nose. Secrets after midnight, he thought grimly, and I'm only scratching the surface. A dull, fluorescent light hummed overhead in the break room at Hightower Distribution Center. Lance flicked open his locker, retrieving a small, unmarked box he'd hidden there earlier that morning. A discreet DNA testing kit. His co-worker Tessa, a friendly brunette with a quick wit, passed by, clutching a can of soda. She glanced at the box in his hand, concern darkening her expression. You okay, Lance? You look like you haven't slept in days. He forced a tight-lipped smile. Just, personal stuff. Tessa nodded sympathetically. Hey, if you need to talk. Appreciate it, he said, cutting her off gently. He liked Tessa, but this was too complicated for small talk. He slipped the box into his duffel bag. I'll do it tonight. That evening, Serena claimed she had a meeting with a friend, no further details. She left the house around 7, her heels clicking briskly on the driveway. Jaden was in his room finishing homework, while Ava was sprawled on the living room rug, doodling on pink construction paper. Lance seized the moment. In the hallway closet, he found the family's hairbrushes, used daily. He carefully plucked a few strands from Jaden's brush, then from Ava's. His hands shook as he sealed each sample in a labeled envelope. God, I feel like a criminal. He couldn't stop replaying Serena's ominous phone call at the school, or the snippet of the text from R. Blackwood. There was a finality in her voice that day. She was tying up loose ends, and he was one of them. Dad! Jaden's voice nearly made Lance jump. The boy stood at the closet doorway, confusion etched on his face. What are you looking for? Lance's mouth went dry. He held up a half-broken umbrella as a decoy. Just checking if this old thing still works, he said, forcing a chuckle. Jaden blinked, shrugged, and wandered off. Lance exhaled in relief. Once he was alone again, he slipped into the master bathroom, shutting the door behind him. Carefully, he placed the hair samples into the kit's plastic pouches, scanning the instructions to ensure he did everything correctly. Mail them tomorrow, he murmured. Then wait. As if fate wanted to mock him, his phone buzzed right then with a text Miles, checking in. Hey, any updates? Remember, don't do anything rash. Let me know if you need help. Lance texted back. Collecting samples tonight. I'll send them to the lab first thing in the morning. Keep you posted. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, a man with bags under his eyes, stubble shading his jaw, and a gaze haunted by betrayal. Quiet steps toward the truth, buddy, he told himself. That's all you can do right now. Gray clouds blanketed the sky on Saturday morning, promising rain. Lance sat on the porch steps, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug, while Jaden kicked a soccer ball around the front yard. The boy's skill had improved lately. He could dribble without losing control, something that would have made Lance proud under normal circumstances. But now, every time Lance looked at Jaden, he felt a pang in his chest. Is it all a lie? A voice in his head whispered. He hated that voice. Dad! Jaden called, adjusting his glasses. Want to pass the ball with me? Setting down his coffee, Lance stood, forcing energy into his muscles. Sure thing, champ. They traded passes across the lawn, stepping around puddles left by a brief morning shower. For a few minutes, Lance managed to forget the swirl of suspicion in his mind. Jaden's laughter was infectious, a reminder of simpler times. From the porch, Ava clapped and giggled. Kick it to me, Jaden, she squealed, jumping up and down. Jaden obliged, sending a gentle roll her way. She tried to boot it back, but missed, stumbling slightly. Lance hurried over to steady her. Easy, sweetheart. You okay? I'm okay. She giggled, hugging his leg. You caught me just in time. His heart squeezed. Caught her just in time. If only I could catch everything else falling apart. He glanced back at the house, noticing Serena peeking through the blinds. Even from this distance, he felt her eyes on him cold, calculating. She quickly vanished from sight when she realized she'd been spotted. After lunch, Jaden disappeared to his friend's place, and Ava started coloring at the kitchen table. Meanwhile, Lance rummaged through a drawer, searching for stamps to mail the DNA kit. The sooner I get these out, the sooner I'll know. Serena strolled into the kitchen, wearing a fitted gray blouse and black jeans, phone in hand as usual. She paused, looking at the padded envelope Lance clutched. "You sending something?" she asked casually. His pulse spiked. "Yeah, some old paperwork. Need to get it off my plate." Her gaze flicked to the label, but he angled it away. She pursed her lips. "All right," she said, crossing her arms. "Anything I should know about?" "Plenty," he thought darkly, but he shrugged. "Nope, just work stuff." She studied him a moment longer, then turned on her heel and walked away. Lance let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Jesus. That was close. Before the end of the day, he managed to slip out to the post office. The sky had opened up, drenching the streets in a downpour. Rain battered his windshield as he navigated through light Saturday traffic. When he reached the mail drop box, he felt a surge of adrenaline. Sliding the sealed envelope inside felt like stepping off a cliff, no turning back now. "Just do it," he muttered, letting go of the envelope. It vanished into the slot with a hollow thunk. His heart thumped in tandem with the pounding rain. Soon I'll have an answer, and it may destroy everything I've ever believed. 3 days later, the results arrived in Lance's inbox. It was mid-afternoon. Jaden was at soccer practice, Ava still at school, and Serena had gone shopping at least. That's what she claimed. Lance sat at the dining table, laptop open, foot tapping anxiously on the hardwood floor. A single email subject line glared at him. DNA test results, confidential. He hesitated, stomach knotted, then clicked. The report loaded slowly, as though mocking his impatience. Finally, lines of text appeared, black on white. Probability of paternity, Jaden Parker. 0%. Probability of paternity, Ava Parker. 0%. He inhaled sharply. It felt like a punch to the gut. The words blurred, tears pricking his eyes. 0%. 0. He reread it, half expecting a glitch or a mistake, but the numbers didn't change. Shaky hands hovered above the keyboard. The agony that spread through his chest was unlike anything he'd felt before. He choked down a sob, every memory of fatherhood twisting into a cruel joke. The first time Jaden called him Dad, Ava's giggles whenever she saw him, none of it was real. Or was it real for me, just not for her? For a full minute, he just sat there, numb. Then he reached for his phone, scrolling to Miles's contact. He pressed call, voice trembling when the line connected. "Miles, it's me," Lance said. "Lance?" and said. They're not mine," he croaked, hardly recognizing his own voice. "Neither of them. 0%. A pause. Miles exhaled on the other end, voice calm but weighted with sorrow. "I'm so sorry, buddy. We'll handle this, okay? Just hold tight." Lance closed his eyes, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. He felt like he was drowning, each breath a struggle. His gaze drifted to a framed photo of Jaden and Ava, the two of them hugging him at a park picnic last summer, sunbeams dancing across their faces. That love was real to me, he thought, but the test said otherwise. I need you," Lance whispered, his throat raw. "I'll head over soon," Miles replied. "Stay put. Don't confront her yet, not without a plan." Lance nodded, though Miles couldn't see him. "All right." He cleared his throat, fighting for composure. "Thanks, man." He ended the call and stared at the silent house. So empty, so full of lies, he thought. Soon, Serena would walk back in with her perfect smile, pretending everything was normal. Not anymore, he vowed, shoulders trembling with rage and heartbreak. Clenching his fists, he forced a few calming breaths. "Miles is right, I can't blow this up tonight. I need to figure out how to protect myself, how to protect what's left." He pushed the laptop away, stood on unsteady legs, and marched to the living room. The ache in his chest refused to subside. Yet beneath the pain, a flicker of determination burned. She won't see it coming, but I'll make sure she never does this to me again. A thick tension hung in the living room air, like the heavy humidity before a thunderstorm, when Lance found Serena there, flipping through a fashion magazine on the sofa. Outside the large bay window, gray clouds drifted across a pale sky, promising rain. Jaden was at soccer practice, and Ava was watching cartoons in her bedroom, leaving the adults momentarily alone. Lance's heart thudded with a mix of anger and dread. He thought he'd calm down once he had the DNA results, but the knowledge that neither Jaden nor Ava was biologically his only kindled a deeper fury. "Stay measured," he told himself. "Don't show all your cards." He cleared his throat. "We need to talk." Serena looked up from the magazine, arching a perfectly groomed eyebrow. She wore a sleek black blouse and jeans, her hair pinned back in a neat ponytail. "About what?" she asked, voice mild but eyes guarded. He paced near the fireplace, hands jammed into his pockets. "About the kids," he finally said. "Don't you think it's odd they barely resemble me?" Her lips thinned and she set the magazine aside. "Seriously?" A short, sarcastic laugh escaped her. "You're bringing up that nonsense again? Genetics can be weird, Lance. You're not a scientist." He bristled, stepping closer. "I may not be a scientist, but I'm not blind either. Ava has none of my features, nothing. And Jaden, all he's got is your eyes." She stood up, crossing her arms. "God, you sound paranoid. Is this some midlife crisis? You barely turned 30, but maybe you're already unraveling." His jaw clenched. "She's flipping this on me. Why get so defensive unless you have something to hide?" A flash of anger clouded her face. "I'm defensive because you're accusing me of what exactly? Cheating? Creating children out of thin air?" She let out a scoff, stepping forward to glare at him. "I'm done entertaining your petty suspicions, Lance." He looked at her, noticing how her knuckles whitened around the folded magazine. "Funny, you didn't say a clear no. You just deflected." Serena's response was a sneer. "If you want to pick fights, do it somewhere else. I'm not in the mood." With that, she brushed past him, her perfume trailing behind in a sweet, cloying cloud. "If you keep this up, you'll push me away for good," she tossed over her shoulder. He exhaled shakily as she marched upstairs, footsteps echoing on the wooden steps. We're already way past that point, he thought bitterly. She'd lied to him for years, and that short exchange only confirmed she had zero remorse. A quiet tension remained in the aftermath. From the hallway, Ava's cartoon show babbled away, oblivious to the emotional landmine in the house. Lance stared at the spot where Serena had stood, feeling a tremor of resolve tighten his muscles. "She's not giving me anything," he muttered under his breath, mind churning. "Fine. I'll get the answers my own way." "So she stonewalled you," Miles said, sipping black coffee across the small desk in his law office. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a dull glare on the stack of documents between them. Outside, rain pattered gently against the window, matching Lance's somber mood. Lance nodded, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah. Every time I try to corner her, she flips it on me, acts like I'm the crazy one. She won't admit a thing." Miles drummed his fingers on the desk. "All right, so we know she's not going to cooperate. That means we proceed with what we have, the DNA results." He glanced at the manila folder marked confidential. "And you suspect she's been funneling money away, right?" "Yeah," Lance answered grimly. "I've noticed some unusual charges on our joint account cash withdrawals, weird payments. Nothing huge by itself, but they add up." He let out a frustrated breath. I never thought to question her before." A sympathetic twist crossed Miles's face. "It's time we map out a strategy. For the divorce and for protecting your assets, the DNA tests give you grounds to challenge paternity. The court won't force you to pay child support if the kids aren't biologically yours, especially if there was deception involved. But emotionally, I get that's another story." Lance's gaze dropped, the sting of betrayal flaring in his chest. "Jaden and Ava might not be my blood, but they're still my kids, you know? He cut himself off, not wanting to break down right there. Miles lowered his voice. "Hey, I understand. We don't have to decide custody this minute. The important thing is to keep Serena from blindsiding you. If she's planning to leave and take the house, we need to block her financially." A loud clap of thunder rattled the office window, and Lance's heart gave a similar jolt. "You mean freezing accounts?" he asked. Miles nodded. "Exactly. We can request a court order an emergency hearing to prevent her from moving or liquidating joint assets. But I need more concrete evidence of wrongdoing. Bank statements, credit card bills, any link to what's his name? Ronan Blackwood?" Lance's eyes hardened at the mention of that name. "Right. She's definitely in cahoots with him. Saw more suspicious texts, and I overheard part of a phone call. They're planning something big." He paused. "But I don't have direct proof yet, just scraps." Miles offered a reassuring smile. "Scraps can lead to bigger clues. And once we have enough, we file. Until then, keep your head down, but keep your eyes open." Lance exhaled slowly. "I'll do just that." Miles leaned back, crossing his arms. "And Lance, I know this is hard. I can't imagine how it feels to learn your kids aren't your own. But keep it together for them. Don't let Serena provoke you into doing something reckless." A surge of bitterness rose in Lance's throat, but he swallowed it down. "I won't. She won't see me coming until I've got everything locked in place." A flicker of admiration crossed Miles's face. "Good. I'll start drafting the necessary paperwork. When you find more evidence, bring it straight to me." Thunder rumbled again as Lance gathered his coat. The storm is just beginning, he thought, stepping into the hallway. But at least now I have a plan. By the following week, Lance had combed through every spare piece of financial paperwork he could find: monthly bills, insurance forms, random receipts stuck in kitchen drawers. Late one night, after the kids had gone to bed, he sat at the dining table under a single yellow lamp. Outside, a crescent moon glimmered weakly through drifting clouds. Stacks of paper surrounded him like a fortress of hidden truths. He methodically flipped page after page. His phone buzzed occasionally, Miles sending quick messages of encouragement, or Tessa from work asking if he was okay. He ignored most notifications, laser-focused on finding clues. Eventually, he hit a bizarre transaction for a high-end jewelry store across town. The date? The exact weekend Serena had claimed to be on a work trip. The name on the receipt read, R. Blackwood. His heart thundered in his chest. "Gotcha," he whispered, scribbling notes. The purchase was a diamond bracelet worth thousands. Lance's mind reeled. She never wore anything like that around me, so either she sold it or gave it back to the real buyer. He stood, stretching cramped muscles, and let out a bitter laugh. "She said she was off networking," he muttered. Turns out it was more personal than that. Stuffing the incriminating document into a secure envelope, he locked it in a small, fireproof box he'd purchased just for this purpose. No way was he letting Serena stumble on that. At that moment, the hallway floor creaked. He froze. A second later, Serena appeared, leaning against the archway in a satin robe, her dark hair falling over one shoulder. "Burning the midnight oil, I see," she said, voice soft but eyes razor-sharp. "You're spending a lot of time with these papers lately." He forced a casual shrug, closing a file. "Just going over finances, making sure everything's in order." She glided forward, the robe swaying with each step, an almost predatory smile on her lips. "You know, you should be careful. Sometimes digging into secrets gets you hurt." His stomach tightened at the veiled threat, but he flashed a tight smile, refusing to let her see he was shaken. "Thanks for the concern," he said flatly. "I can handle myself." She narrowed her eyes, then shrugged as if dismissing him. "Suit yourself," she murmured, turning on her heel to disappear back down the hall, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. Lance let out a slow breath. She's on to me, or at least suspects. Clenching his fist, he stared at the stack of papers. Ronan's name seemed to glare at him, mocking his past naivety. "I'll find the rest of your secrets, Serena," he vowed, "and when I do, you'll regret underestimating me." The house was deceptively calm the next evening. Lance had busied himself making dinner simple chicken stir-fry while Jaden finished homework and Ava doodled pictures of colorful butterflies. The setting sun bathed the living room in warm orange light. For a fleeting moment, he almost forgot the war raging behind the scenes. Then Serena's phone rang. She quickly excused herself, stepping onto the back patio. Lance set down his spatula, heart pounding. He tiptoed toward the sliding glass door, just in time to hear a muffled voice on the other end. He couldn't make out every word, but he definitely heard Ronan, deal, and assets. So she's finalizing some arrangement with him. The betrayal stung more deeply than usual, possibly because he felt a strange, final countdown looming in the air. A couple of minutes later, Serena re-entered, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. She froze when she saw him standing there, arms folded. "What?" she snapped defensively. "I heard part of your call," he said, voice low. "Talking to Ronan again?" She squared her shoulders. "You've been eavesdropping? That's rich. Maybe if you spent more time being a decent husband and less time lurking, I wouldn't have to—" His anger flared, cutting off her words. "Don't pin your choices on me, Serena. You've been lying for years. The kids—" He sucked in a shaky breath, remembering Miles's advice not to blow up prematurely, but he couldn't hold it in. "I know they're not mine." She froze, color draining from her face. For a split second, her perfect mask faltered, revealing raw panic. Then she clenched her jaw. "That's ridiculous." He stepped closer, voice trembling with pent-up rage. "Stop it. I've done tests. Jaden and Ava 0% match. You want to keep denying?" She set her phone on the counter with a sharp click, fury blazing in her eyes. "You have no right." "No right?" he repeated, voice cracking with bitter laughter. "I've been raising them, loving them, paying for everything, and you think I have no right to the truth?" They glared at each other, tension so thick it felt like the walls were closing in. At the far end of the hallway, Jaden's voice called uncertainly, "Mom? Dad? Is everything okay?" Serena forced a slow exhale, her tone dropping to a hiss. "You're crossing a line you'll regret." Lance's fists unclenched, open palms shaking. "That's your only defense? Threatening me because I found out your secret?" He shot her a scathing look. "You might want to watch who you threaten." For a moment, her eyes flickered with something akin to desperation, then hardened again into defiance. "Fine. Do what you want, but trust me, you'll pay for this." He bit back the urge to scream in frustration, refusing to let her see him crack. "We'll see who pays," he said, voice eerily calm. A trembling silence settled between them as they stared each other down. Beyond the living room, Jaden and Ava tiptoed out of sight, sensing the volatility. When Serena finally stormed off in a swirl of anger, the entire house seemed to breathe again. Lance stood there, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He knew, deep down, that this confrontation had only lit the fuse. "The explosion is coming," he thought, recalling Miles's words of caution. "But at least I'm not in the dark anymore." Morning sunlight streamed through the living room windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Lance Parker sat at the kitchen table, a pen in hand, staring down at the official divorce paperwork. The ticking of the clock on the wall felt louder than ever. He inhaled deeply, recalling Miles Hughes's words of encouragement. "This is your move. Don't hesitate, or she'll get the upper hand." The documents were straightforward enough allegations of infidelity, deception, and the recent revelation that Jaden and Ava weren't his biological children. Lance's chest tightened at that thought. He pushed through the pain and scribbled his signature. Done. A shuffle of footsteps caught his attention. Serena stepped into view, wearing a silky maroon blouse, her eyes cold as ice. She'd just returned from an unexplained errand, and tension crackled in the air. "What are you doing?" she demanded, noticing the paperwork. Lance rose to his feet, divorce papers clutched in his hand. "I'm filing," he said quietly. "I won't be strung along anymore." Her face contorted with fury. "You have some nerve." She pointed a manicured finger at him. "I supported you for years," he cut in, voice trembling. "You lied to me. About the kids, about everything." She let out a hollow laugh. "Lied? You're the one who's about to abandon your family. Or are you too thick to see how horrible this makes you look?" His blood boiled, but he refused to rise to the bait. "I'm not abandoning anyone. You destroyed this marriage, Serena." Her gaze flicked to the documents. Suddenly, she grabbed them from his grasp, flipping through pages. Her voice climbed. "I swear, Lance, if you file these, I'll make sure everyone knows what a neglectful, worthless excuse for a husband you are." He swallowed a surge of anger. Threaten me all you want, but it's happening. With a guttural snarl, Serena hurled the papers across the living room. Pages fluttered like wounded birds, scattering near the sofa. Then she stormed past him, eyes blazing. Jaden and Ava, who had been watching cartoons in the adjacent room, peeked around the corner. The shock in their expressions tightened Lance's heart. "Kids, it's all right," he managed, forcing a shaky breath. "Mom and I were just having a grown-up talk." But Ava's lower lip quivered, and Jaden looked stunned. Serena shot Lance a venomous glare before locking herself in the bedroom. The slam of the door reverberated through the house. Lance stooped to gather the scattered papers, his hands trembling. No going back now, he thought, hugging the stack to his chest. The meltdown had begun, and the children had seen a glimpse of the coming storm. A week later, Lance found himself in a small, austere courtroom with Miles at his side. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, and a stale air lingered in the cramped space. A judge in dark robes sat behind a heavy wooden bench, flipping through files with practiced efficiency. Serena arrived in a sleek pencil skirt and matching blazer, her expression an icy mask. She took a seat opposite Lance, ignoring the glare of onlookers. Whispers rippled through the room, other attorneys, a few curious bystanders. Rumors of Serena's infidelity had already begun circulating, and on top of that, the sensational discovery of the children's true paternity stirred hushed conversation. Miles stepped forward, presenting the initial arguments. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Parker, has credible reasons to believe Mrs. Parker intends to liquidate or hide joint assets. We request an immediate asset freeze to prevent financial damage while we settle the divorce proceedings." The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, glanced at Serena. "Mrs. Parker, do you have counsel present?" A tall, thin man in a pinstriped suit rose Serena's lawyer. "Yes, Your Honor," he replied. "Miss Parker denies any wrongdoing. We believe the claims are exaggerated." Miles produced the newly compiled evidence of questionable bank activity and the DNA tests. The hush in the room intensified when the mention of 0% paternity surfaced. Serena's eyes flashed with a mixture of rage and fear. Her lawyer tried to cut in. "This is a private family matter. There's no immediate threat to the assets. My client has every right to manage her finances." But the judge lifted a hand, silencing him. She reviewed the documents, her expression growing more serious. "I see. Given these concerns and the possibility of fraudulent activity, I'm granting the temporary freeze. Neither party may sell, withdraw, or transfer assets without court approval." Serena stood abruptly, cheeks flushing red. "This is absurd," she hissed, ignoring her lawyer's attempt to calm her. "He's painting me as some gold digger." The judge rapped her gavel once. "Miss Parker, order in the court. We will address your defense at the main hearing. For now, the order stands." A tense stillness followed. Lance felt his pulse pounding in his ears. The judge adjourned the session, leaving the small gallery of onlookers abuzz with murmured speculation. Serena turned to him, her voice dripping with contempt. "Congratulations," she spat. "You've made a spectacle of our private lives." He met her gaze, heart aching for what once was. "This is all on you, Serena." She stared daggers at him, then stomped out of the courtroom, heels clacking angrily on the tile floor. Miles gently patted Lance's shoulder. "We got the freeze. That's good," Miles murmured. Lance tried to breathe, but the emotional weight pressed heavily on his chest. Serena would never forgive this public humiliation, he knew, and the real fight was just getting started. The next few days were a blur of emotional strain. Word traveled fast around their suburban community. Serena's meltdown at the courthouse hadn't helped. Neighbors, co-workers, and casual acquaintances all seemed to have an opinion or wanted juicy details. At the distribution center where Lance worked, Tessa, his friendly co-worker, approached him during a break. "Hey, sorry to pry, but I heard rumors about you and Serena splitting. Are you okay?" Lance forced a half smile. "I'm getting by." She pursed her lips sympathetically. "I can't imagine how stressful this is. If there's anything I can do..." He held up a hand. "I appreciate it, really. It's complicated." Meanwhile, at school, Jaden's usual eagerness for soccer practice wavered, and Ava showed signs of anxiety in class. A concerned teacher, Miss Bradford, called Lance to mention Ava's teary episodes during nap time. "She's been extra clingy," Miss Bradford explained gently. "She keeps asking if everything's okay at home." Lance's gut twisted with guilt. "I'll talk to her. Thank you for letting me know." Late one afternoon, as Lance pulled into the driveway after work, he saw Jaden sitting on the front steps, shoulders slumped. The boy looked up, eyes a little red. "Dad," Jaden said, voice trembling, "why is Mom so angry with you? She keeps saying awful stuff." Lance set down his keys, kneeling beside him. He wanted to speak the truth that Serena had betrayed them, but Jaden was only 11. He's too young to shoulder adult betrayals. "Your mom and I are just working through some problems," Lance managed carefully. "I know it's scary, but no matter what, I'm here for you and your sister." Jaden swallowed hard, nodding. "Okay," he paused. "But she called you a liar, said you're trying to steal our house." A flicker of pain crossed Lance's face. "No one's stealing anything, Bud. It's complicated, but the court will sort it out." Jaden rubbed his eyes and stood. "I'm gonna go finish homework," he mumbled. As he watched his son retreat inside, Lance felt hollow. My own child, who might not even share my blood, confused and hurting. The heartbreak was suffocating, but he kept swallowing it down. "I have to see this through." A crisp morning breeze rolled through Miles's office window as Lance arrived for another meeting. Papers lay scattered across the desk, and Miles shuffled them with calculated precision. "We've confirmed a suspicious secondary bank account," Miles announced, tapping a statement with his pen. "Serena's been transferring small sums for months, maybe years. The totals are significant once you add them up." Lance leaned over the desk, scanning the printouts. Each line was a blow to his pride. "How could I be so blind?" he muttered. "All this time she was funneling money out." Miles sighed, sympathy in his eyes. "Sometimes love blinds us. The important thing is we have proof now. A judge won't look kindly on her financial deceit, especially given the paternity situation." Nodding, Lance rubbed the back of his neck. "So what next?" Miles's lips curved into a grim smile. "We present this at the formal hearing. It strengthens your claim that she acted in bad faith, possibly even fraud. This could influence property division and the final outcome. It might also show her motive for, well, everything." The revelation felt both validating and devastating. She planned to take it all: the house, the money, my trust, and vanish with Ronan. He clenched his fists on his lap, struggling to remain calm. "I can't believe I gave her my whole life," he whispered. Miles placed a hand on his shoulder. "She's the one who threw it away. Don't forget that." A quiet tension settled. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, the only sound breaking the silence. Lance closed his eyes, picturing Jaden and Ava's worried faces, Serena's venomous glares, and that once cozy home he'd worked so hard to build. "We're ready for the formal trial, right?" he asked, voice tinged with a newfound resolve. Miles nodded firmly. "Absolutely. Once we present the hidden account, the judge will see the truth. And with the DNA results, plus the evidence of her affair, we have a strong case." Lance stood, smoothing the wrinkles from his jacket. "This is it, the turning point." He glanced at the office window, where morning sunlight glinted through, as if symbolizing a new dawn. "I won't let her take me down quietly," he said, determination blazing in his eyes. Miles grinned. "Then let's do this." Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the county courthouse, illuminating the polished floors where attorneys hustled by with briefcases. Lance sat beside Miles at the plaintiff's table, his heart pounding hard enough to pulse in his ears. On the other side of the aisle, Serena Parker, flanked by her lawyer, exuded an icy poise that barely contained her fury. She wore a tailored navy suit, her expression a mask of defiance. The judge, a gray-haired man with sharp features, called the court to order. Rows of spectators, mostly curious onlookers and a few local reporters, settled into the worn wooden benches. After a flurry of procedural remarks, Miles stood, offering a composed nod to the judge. "Your Honor, we are here today to present conclusive evidence regarding Mrs. Serena Parker's deliberate deception toward my client, Mr. Lance Parker," Miles began, his voice firm. "This includes infidelity, financial misconduct, and falsification of paternity." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Lance could feel Serena's glare on him like a scorching beam. A flash of old memories assaulted him. The kids' laughter. The day he signed the mortgage for their home, that moment he overheard her damning phone call in the school hallway. Focus, he reminded himself, steadying his breath. The judge gestured for Miles to continue. Calmly, Miles presented the DNA test results, proving Jaden and Ava were not Lance's biological children. Then he introduced bank statements displaying Serena's hidden withdrawals and suspicious transfers. Every piece of paper felt like a fresh blow to the mirage Serena had constructed. At the defendant's table, Serena's lawyer interjected more than once, objecting to irrelevancies and calling some of the evidence taken out of context. The judge, however, allowed Miles to lay out the case. Gradually, the weight of deception became harder to refute. We request the court find that Mrs. Parker's actions constitute fraud and deceit, particularly regarding paternity, Miles concluded gravely. In addition, we ask for a fair division of property that reflects this betrayal. The judge nodded thoughtfully, looking to Serena's side. Counsel for the defendant, you'll have an opportunity to respond. But first, we'll call Mrs. Parker to the stand. A visible tension crossed Serena's face. Lance felt a quick surge of mingled anger and pity. Whatever happens, he thought, the truth is finally out in the open. Serena stepped onto the witness stand, smoothing her blazer with an air of forced composure. The court clerk administered the oath, and she swore to tell the truth. Once seated, she clasped her hands in her lap, knuckles whitening. Her lawyer began gently, asking background questions. How long she'd been married, the circumstances of her relationship with Lance. Serena answered in a subdued tone, painting herself as a spouse who felt neglected, emotionally unsupported. Lance clenched his jaw. He'd heard these accusations before, but they stung anew in a public setting. Mrs. Parker, the lawyer ventured carefully, there are allegations that you engaged in an affair with Ronan Blackwood. How do you respond? A flicker of panic danced in her eyes. She inhaled sharply. That so-called affair is blown out of proportion. Ronan was a friend, an investor. We had some personal dealings, yes, but not what Mr. Parker is implying. Her voice cracked, a performance of wounded innocence. Then Miles took his turn, stepping forward with calm confidence. Mrs. Parker, you claim Mr. Blackwood was just a friend. Are you denying the explicit messages we have on record indicating romantic involvement? Serena's lips thinned. Those messages were misread. We were close, but... She paused, glancing toward the gallery. It wasn't a betrayal. My marriage was already broken. Miles nodded, face expressionless. And the children, Mrs. Parker? You never told Lance he wasn't their biological father. Was that also a misreading? She tensed visibly. I planned to tell him, eventually. But I was afraid of how he'd react, she managed, her voice wavering now. He wasn't exactly the supportive type. A quiet hush fell across the courtroom as Miles produced the official paternity test results. You withheld this truth for over a decade, collecting Mr. Parker's financial and emotional support under false pretenses. Why keep that a secret so long? Serena's composure cracked. Because I was scared, she snapped. He would have left me, taken everything. I didn't deserve to be abandoned without security. The judge raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. So, you believed you had the right to conceal paternity while benefiting from Mr. Parker's resources? Tears welled in Serena's eyes, tears of frustration more than sorrow. She let out a trembling exhale. I never meant for it to go this far. I just didn't know how to fix it. A heavy silence followed. Glancing at Lance, she shot him a desperate look, but he stared straight ahead, numb to her pleas. She's only sorry she got caught, he thought. After Serena's tense testimony, the judge called a brief recess. Lance stepped into the courthouse corridor with Miles. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a dull hum of voices surrounded them. The tension was palpable, like a thundercloud hovering, waiting to break. They'd barely made it 10 steps before Serena emerged, tears streaking her mascara. She stormed toward Lance, ignoring the murmured, "Mrs. Parker, please," from her lawyer. "You think you've won?" she hissed, voice low but trembling with rage. "You have no idea how humiliating this is." Lance kept his posture firm. "I didn't force you to lie for years," he said evenly. "That was your choice." She gave a short, harsh laugh. "You're not perfect either, Lance. Don't act like some saint. For all your holier-than-thou attitude, you can't even keep your own kids." A flash of regret crossed her features. Perhaps she realized how cruel that sounded. But she didn't back down. Miles gently placed a hand on Lance's arm. "Let's keep moving," he murmured. He glanced at Serena's lawyer, who was hurrying over with a worried expression. Ronan Blackwood was nowhere to be seen, fueling whispers that he'd abandoned Serena now that her legal troubles were at full boil. A few reporters snapped photos from a distance, capturing Serena's furious expression. She glared at them, batting the phone cameras away. "Go ahead," she spat at Lance, voice cracking. "Drag me through the mud. But if you think you're leaving with everything, you're delusional." Lance's chest tightened. A swirl of heartbreak, anger, and exhaustion weighed down every breath. "The truth came out, Serena. That's on you." She swore under her breath, pivoting on her heel to stride toward the restroom, presumably to fix her makeup. Miles exhaled a tight sigh. "We should head back inside," he said quietly. "It's nearly time." Lance nodded, glancing at the double doors leading to the courtroom. He caught a glimpse of a bailiff gesturing for them to return. No matter how loud Serena yells, no matter how deep her threats cut, the judge's ruling is all that matters now. Tension filled the courtroom as everyone retook their seats. The judge tapped a few papers together, cleared his throat, and began summarizing the arguments. Lance could barely hear over the rush of blood in his ears. "This is it. Based on the testimony and evidence provided," the judge said solemnly, "the court finds that Mrs. Parker concealed the truth of the children's paternity for an extended period, effectively committing fraud against Mr. Parker." Serena stared down at the table, her shoulders trembling. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, but she yanked it away, eyes focused on the floor. "Regarding the marital property," the judge continued, "we find that Mrs. Parker's hidden financial transactions suggest intentional deceit. Therefore, Mr. Parker retains principal rights to the house and any jointly acquired assets, subject to further confirmation of the sums misappropriated." A faint gasp rippled through the onlookers. Miles touched Lance's shoulder reassuringly. Lance exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, relief mingling with lingering sadness. Then came the final blow. "As for paternity and parental obligations," the judge said, voice firm, "Mr. Parker is not the children's biological father. The court recognizes that he has standing to discontinue any paternal rights and responsibilities if he chooses. However, that remains his decision alone." Serena squeezed her eyes shut, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Lance swallowed hard, the judge's words slicing deep. "I get to decide whether to keep being a father or walk away. It's what I wanted, yet it hurts like hell." The judge rapped the gavel. "We will reconvene if further clarification is required. For now, the court rules in favor of Mr. Parker in matters of property and acknowledges the paternity results as valid." He paused. "This session is adjourned." A burst of chatter erupted in the gallery. On one side, Miles shook Lance's hand, congratulating him softly. On the other, Serena slumped in her chair, devastation and anger etched across her face. Lance stood, feeling a strange emptiness. Yes, he'd legally won, he'd kept his house, exposed her lies. But the victory tasted bittersweet. All those years, all that love I thought was real. "You did it," Miles said quietly. "I'm sorry it had to come to this, but justice was served." Lance nodded, gaze distant. He watched Serena's trembling figure, her world collapsing right alongside his illusions. With the judge's final words, the door to their shared life slammed shut. A warm morning sun spilled over the Parker household, soon to be Lance's alone, casting golden beams across the living room floor. Moving boxes stood scattered like silent witnesses to a broken marriage. Lance hovered by the front door, arms crossed, watching Serena stuff clothes into a suitcase. By court order, she was to vacate the premises. And yet, the tension in the air felt heavier than any piece of luggage. A single duffel bag lay open on the sofa, half filled with designer shoes. She zipped it shut, refusing to meet his eyes. I don't need your pity, Serena muttered when he offered to help her lift a box. She stepped away, her posture rigid, hair pulled back in a tight bun. It's not pity, Lance said softly. Just trying to keep things civil. She let out a brittle laugh, glancing around the living room as though searching for one last chance to claim something. The house felt hollow. A few framed photos had been taken down, images of a once happy family that no longer existed. Lance's stomach twisted, remembering how those pictures once meant everything to him. Jaden and Ava were at school, sparing them the painful sight of Serena's final departure. As Serena dragged her suitcase toward the entryway, she paused, looking at Lance with a curious mix of resentment and regret. I never wanted it to end like this, she said, voice trembling just enough to reveal a flicker of genuine emotion. But you forced my hand with that trial. You humiliated me. Lance inhaled slowly. I didn't force you to do anything, Serena. You chose to lie. I only exposed the truth. Her jaw tightened. For a moment he thought she might say something scathing, but she just pressed her lips into a thin line. With a last, chilly glance, she reached for the door handle. I'll be sending someone to pick up the rest of my things, she remarked, her tone regaining an edge. Don't toss them out if you know what's good for you. He nodded. Fine. The door opened to a mild spring day, birds chirping in the distance, a jarring contrast to the simmering tension inside. Serena hauled her luggage out, the wheels scraping on the concrete walkway. Lance stood there, exhaling a shaky sigh as the door fell shut behind her. No final wave, no backward glance. For a long minute, he listened to the echo of her suitcase rolling away. Then silence. With that, a chapter of his life had definitively closed. Clearing the debris, he thought, but the real cleaning up is just beginning. 2 days later, the sky was overcast, threatening a drizzle. Lance sat at the kitchen table, flipping through paperwork for the official divorce settlement. Yet his mind wandered to a more pressing decision: Jaden and Ava. By law, he could renounce any claim to them, given they weren't his biologically. But could he simply walk away? He heard the school bus rumble to a stop outside. Moments later, Jaden burst in, a soccer ball clutched under one arm. Ava followed, cradling a colorful art project. They greeted him cheerily, oblivious to the legal storm swirling around them. Dad, guess what? Jaden exclaimed. Our team's in the semifinals next weekend. Lance forced a smile. That's great, buddy. I'll be there to cheer you on. Ava piped up, holding out a paper covered in glitter. I drew a picture of you and me at the park, she beamed. The image was a scrawled crayon version of Lance pushing her on a swing. His heart tightened. Thanks, sweetheart, he whispered, brushing her hair aside to plant a quick kiss on her forehead. It's beautiful. Across the room, the phone buzzed. Serena's name flashed on the screen she'd tried calling a few times recently. Lance sent it to voicemail, not ready to deal with her demands. He had bigger concerns. After dinner, he found himself in the living room, mind swirling with doubts. Maybe the judge was right. I have a choice. But is it really a choice? These kids love me. I raised them. The notion of stepping away from Jaden and Ava forever felt like cutting out a piece of his soul. He typed a quick message to Miles. I can't abandon them. Let's talk custody. Then he powered off his phone and joined Jaden on the couch to watch a soccer recap. Ava snuggled beside him with a stuffed bunny, her eyes drooping with sleep. Lance felt a rush of fierce protectiveness. No matter what, I'm still their dad in every way that counts. A drizzle fell on the cafe's windows, beads of water sliding down in jagged trails. Lance sat at a corner table, swirling a cappuccino that had long gone cold. The tension thrummed in his chest. Serena had asked to meet for the kids' sake, as she put it. She walked in, hair damp from the rain, wearing a long, dark trench coat. Sliding into the chair across from him, she offered a fleeting smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thanks for meeting me, she said, voice low. I know it's awkward. Lance nodded, wary. Let's just get to the point. She fiddled with a napkin, eyes downcast. I want to see Jaden and Ava. I might not have legal leverage, but they're still my children. His chest constricted. You want me to facilitate visits? After everything? She grimaced. I know I messed up. But they're the only thing that matters now. I don't want to lose them completely. Lance studied her, remembering the venomous threats and manipulations. Yet he also recalled moments of genuine motherly affection, Serena reading bedtime stories to Ava, cheering at Jaden's soccer games. "She's still their mom," he acknowledged, "even if she used me." "I won't punish the kids by keeping them away from you," he said at last, voice steady. "But I set the boundaries, and if you cause more harm, I'll protect them from you." She swallowed hard, a glimmer of relief crossing her features. "That's fair." Silence settled, broken only by the cafe's gentle hum. Finally, Serena mustered the courage to ask, "And what about us?" A wave of bitter disbelief rolled through him. "Serena, there is no us. You saw to that." She lowered her gaze, moisture rimming her eyes. "Right," she whispered. Then she cleared her throat. Can I have some money? Just to—" A flicker of anger flared within him. Some people never change. He shook his head. "No, I'm not your safety net." Blinking back tears, Serena stood. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth, voice trembling. "Just tell the kids I love them, okay?" He gave a stiff nod. "I'll let them know." She lingered a second longer, as if hoping he'd soften. But he didn't speak again. Clutching her coat, she walked out into the drizzling rain, disappearing among the bustling sidewalk crowd. Lance closed his eyes, releasing a shaky breath. The last meeting indeed, he thought. 3 weeks later, Lance signed the final divorce papers, sealing them in a plain manila envelope. Outside, the midday sun bathed the yard in warm light. A sold sign no longer hung in front. The judge had awarded him full ownership. Boxes were packed away in a corner, now Jaden's soccer gear, Ava's art supplies. Lance had decided to keep them close. The question of fatherhood was answered. He'd remain in their lives, adopting them legally if the system allowed. Blood might not bind them, but love did. A faint scraping sound caught his attention. In the living room, Ava was coloring on the floor, humming a tune. Jaden breezed past, dribbling a small soccer ball, practicing footwork. Lance felt a wistful pang, so many memories of fear and betrayal, yet here they were, forging a simpler happiness. "Dad," Jaden called, shooting him a bright grin. "Can I invite some friends over next weekend for a game?" "Sure," Lance replied, voice thick with warmth. "We can set up a goal in the backyard." He moved through the house, double-checking the locks on windows and doors. No sign of Serena's presence remained. Only echoes of the past lingered, overshadowed by the promise of something better. The tension and heartbreak that once haunted every corner had given way to cautious optimism. On the kitchen counter, a letter from Miles awaited his signature legal documents confirming Lance's continued guardianship of Jaden and Ava. He pressed pen to paper, resolving a future that still held challenges but brimmed with the hope of real family bonds. Stepping outside onto the porch, he inhaled the crisp air. Ronan was gone. Serena had lost her grip on the house and on him. The horizon stretched out bright and open. Lance's heart ached for what he'd lost, but relief swelled at what he still had. 2 children who loved him, and a life he could rebuild on honest foundations. "All right," he murmured, gazing at the sky. "We start over from here." In the distance, Jaden's excited voice and Ava's giggles floated through the open door, wrapping him in a comforting cocoon of family. Lance allowed himself a faint smile. He might be bruised by betrayal, but he had found a new horizon, a place where trust and love could still grow, stronger than before.